Greetings, brave adventurers! FoxyBard here, and today's the day we're digging back into the horror stories. I know you love 'em, and I know you hate 'em, but mostly I know you love hearing them. So today I've got a couple for you. Both of these stories involve players being overbearing in, well, different ways, but still overbearing and not really considering the other players at the table, or that life can exist outside of D&D. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and hit that bell notification icon if you would like to be notified when I post new videos. With all that out of the way, grab a seat by the fire as we dig into more stories of role-playing. Our first story today comes from the subreddit r/RPG horror stories, and was posted by the user Chaos Gamer Girl. Post is titled, "My Family Emergency is More Important Than D&D." I mean, I should hope so. Ooh, TLDR, DM's young nephew nearly dying isn't as important as D&D. What? Yes it is. I was a forever DM for an online group I got introduced to. They were friendly and welcoming, and I greatly enjoyed DMing for them at first. I DM'd for the group for about 2 years, during which the Facebook group was very active with memes and chatting. I'd wake up to hundreds of new messages just on that group. A few months ago, there was a family emergency. We weren't sure if my nephew was going to survive, and if there would be brain damage if he did. He's fine, he's well on the way to full recovery, so everything is awesome. I knew that I couldn't handle the group chat at that point in time, so I sent a message to the other admins and to the group itself. I told them that there was a major family emergency going on, and that I needed to take a step back. I got a few messages back telling me that they are praying for me and sending good thoughts. There's a thoughts and prayers joke in here somewhere, but I'm not gonna make it. Then there's Richard. Not his real name. He freaked. He Facebook called me 4 times in 2 hours, sent me Discord and Facebook messages. He texted my phone and called my phone repeatedly. I finally answered and yelled at him. I told him that I was trying to deal with airlines and getting a flight home, my parents, and trying to keep myself together in all this. I told him that I didn't have the patience right now and to leave me alone. I got a Facebook message from him not half an hour later that was just this diatribe about how I have no right to talk to him like that when I know he's transgender. What? That he thought we worked through my being upset with him for going to work at a grocery store while he had COVID and knew he had COVID. My dude, ugh. That I need to apologize to him for being so terrible. Are you kidding me? No. So I blocked him. He ended up throwing a fit about it, and I left the group completely. It was made clear that since they all knew him in real life, they picked him over the only person DMing. I have a new online group, and I can play as well as DM. I'll never forget how selfish he was, and how he completely ignored the reason I was upset. I don't think he'll ever really understand that my family will always come before TTRPGs, as it should. Everyone Richard doesn't like is transphobic, including my transgender aunt. If he can't get you to back down and apologize for whatever slight he's imagined against you, he screams that you're attacking him because he's trans. He uses being transgender as both a shield and a sword. You can never be upset because of him and his actions. Well, at least you can see why I decided to cover this story now. As the resident trans fox of RPG YouTube, I kinda falls right within my wheelhouse. Now, there are a lot of transphobic overtones that can happen both in tabletop gaming and just in gaming in general, and frankly in most of society in general, but that doesn't mean that everything is transphobic. You can't use it over things that are genuinely really trivial, or else you're going to create that fake mindset that a lot of people seem to have, saying that we make up everything as transphobic, we claim everything is transphobic, which we don't. We claim things that are transphobic are transphobic. And this guy, okay, if I'm gonna be honest, he sounds like he's someone who's a lot younger and hasn't exactly gotten a feel with the greater trans community and with the greater LGBTQ plus community. Because when you're, just a young kid, you're just not used to recognizing transphobia and responding to it appropriately. In fact, it can be kind of hard to not do exactly what he's doing, and sometimes I'll do it as a joke, but it's never genuine. Yeah, to all my cis listeners out there, just know he does not represent all trans people, and to my other trans listeners, don't do this, or at least make it very clear that you're joking if you are doing it as a joke. Navigating TTRPG spaces as a trans person can often be a challenge, but if you're willing to stick your head out and look for the good groups, they're around and they love to have you. So, just keep your chin up. Our next story was also from the RPG Horror Stories subreddit, posted by the user SaltyChicken78. In this story we have a great game being ruined by an overbearing player and a spineless DM. This is going to be a bit of a rant about a game I was a part of some time ago, mostly just to get it off my chest and reflect on where I am now in regards to D&D and role-playing in general. So if it becomes ranty or long-winded at parts, I apologize. The basic premise of the game was that our party of 4 were refugees from a dying world, traveling through the dimensional barriers of reality, Spelljammer style, before our original world was utterly obliterated by an unknown force. We, along with a few thousand others, were to set up a new colony to keep the fate of mankind going after such an apocalyptic event. Of course, with the other standard races mixed in, such as Dragonborn, Tieflings, Dwarves, Halflings, Gnomes, etc. It had the potential of being a very fun, long-running sandbox-style game. The DM had an entire homebrew system he designed himself for the purposes of building up our colony during downtime with new materials, items, and bonuses for focusing down certain improvements and/or paths. Unfortunately, none of us ever got to actually try any of those elements, as one of our party members was simply too selfish and belligerent to let us. For the sake of clarity, I'm going to refer to this player as Benny henceforth. Benny was a personal friend of the DM's he had invited before any of us ever joined. From the very start of the game, it was clear to everyone but the DM that Benny had no interest in the sandbox elements of the game. His first suggestion after our vessel fractured into 3 parts and crashed was to abandon the colony altogether and just get absorbed into the nearest nation we could find. Benny's input only got more idiotic and selfish from there, unfortunately. Any attempt to organize and try to keep the peace after the crash was met with incoherent screeching about tyranny, because apparently Benny's character was a complete anarchist that didn't believe in the concept of law or government to begin with, and because my character, being a human paladin, was the only one willing and able to keep any sort of peace, he made it his mission to undermine me at every turn. He proved this by murdering our one and only NPC wizard during our first session while he was unconscious. I'd detail every instance, but I'd be here all day if I did. Long story short, Benny spent the time I was part of the game attempting to undermine me and the DM's plans, while also trying to turn the game into some over-the-top cinematic movie starring himself. Anytime the focus was off him, he did everything he could to claw it back. Anytime it was on me, Benny would badger and jab at me until I got to the point I refused to speak in fear of him grinding the session to a halt again. During all of this, the DM not only never attempted to curtail him, but instead rewarded his bad behavior. Every time his god-awful decision-making should have killed him, he was bailed out through Deus Ex Machina. Every time he wanted something done, it just happened for no rhyme or reason, while I and the other players had to roll for every small victory. Even when Benny's character did die, he simply created the exact same character under a different name to keep up his antics. Every time we were forced to fight, he complained about us being evil and violent and attempted to reason with literal monsters. Every time we attempted diplomacy and guile, he complained about us being boring and attacked anyways, no matter how overwhelming the odds. Every single time, Benny was bailed out by the DM, pulling some BS out of his butt to retroactively make him right all along and keep him from dying. Even when Benny outright stated he'd gladly let the colony die if he didn't get his way, the DM continued to capitulate to him. We put up with this for months until I and our druid finally decided to confront the DM about it. Only when we did, my friend was unceremoniously booted out of the game for daring to speak out against him. I stayed for one more session, but I just left on my own accord halfway through. Without my friend to try and back me up, the game developed into an insufferable circle of jerks for Benny and Benny alone. For a while, I always thought the issue was me simply being too passive in my approach to D&D. That maybe if I had more stern and confidence, he might have let up. But now, with more experience under my belt, I realize it never mattered how I responded. Benny was a selfish jerk who didn't care about anyone else's fun but his own. Plain and simple. Wow, so that was a case of a that guy mixed with Main Character Syndrome. Oh, I guess those two actually go hand in hand a lot of the time. I don't think you need me to tell you that you really shouldn't be doing any of this, but if you were the type to do something like this, me telling you not to wouldn't really stop you. If you notice someone in one of your games exhibiting any of these kinds of behaviors, and especially if the DM isn't willing or able to do anything about it, that's your clue to just kinda get out, find a new game. You don't want to play with that guys or with Main Character Syndromites. That's the words, we're gonna go with that. Foxy's dictionary to nonsense words aside, I hope you all enjoyed listening to these stories today. Don't forget to like the video if you liked the video, leave me a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. You can also ring the notification bell to be notified, which is, believe it or not, what notification means when I post a new video. And as always, you can join in with the conversation on the FoxyBard Discord server. You can find the link to that down in the video description below. I hope your stories going forward are a bit less horror than these ones. But for now, let's douse the fire and get back to our own adventures.